Am I in hell? I woke up with no ID and I have no way of proving I exist. I need ID.
We'll need to see a social security card.
I need a social security number.
We need to see some ID.
I need ID.
We'll need to see a social security card.
I need a social security number.
We need to see some ID.
I need ID.
We'll need to see a social
Okay,
security
listen,
card.
I don't have ID or a social security number, so where do I start?
Get your birth certificate.
Hey, I need my birth certificate.
Okay, so we will mail it to you right away.
Post office. I never got my birth certificate.
Because you don't actually live there. Your name's got to be on the lease to receive mail.
I'd like to live here.
You got a bank account?
Bank of America.
I
need a bank account.
We need to see 2 forms of ID.
I need
Your
ID.
social security card.
Am I gone? Just disappeared from the face of the earth? And if I am gone, where did I go? Where did I leave? Where will I exist? Am I there? Was I ever there?
In 1837, Horace Mann created the education system, a system at the time designed to pump out factory workers and professors. The same system that is still being used today in the 21st century. Now, Mann's system is backfiring. We are being moulded by the same industrial system that has existed for close to 200 years. That system delivers us into a digital economy that has no need of our outdated skills. This isn't our teachers' fault. This isn't the government's fault. This is due to a rapidly changing world full of technology and unforeseen circumstances. And us Gen Zs are caught in the middle. Welcome to the Driven Young Podcast, the podcast for stressed, overwhelmed young Australians, teaching you practical life skills you can implement now to set yourself up in life. And now your host, Byron Dempsey.
Welcome back to the Driven Young Podcast, and today I'm joined by Baron Ryan, or better known as AmericanBaron. This is my longest episode to date, and such a unique and interesting conversation. I'm really excited to share it with you. Baron is probably one of my all-time favourite TikTokers. His content is unlike anyone else on the platform. He almost creates mini movies laden with comedy, philosophy, and usually a deep message, gaining him over 1.6 million followers. As someone who wanted to be a filmmaker, his content and ability to tell a story is phenomenal, and he's inspired me to start creating similar videos around issues I want to communicate. We originally met through his girlfriend Katrina, who lives in Sydney and was introduced to me via a friend. If you've heard me talk about the 1,000 doors concept, you can see it in action right now. In this episode, Baron and I talk a lot about TikTok, how the platform works, how he got started as a creator, his opinions on college, university, storytelling, psychology, growing old, Marvel, and much more. Make sure you click the link below to sign up for Baron's new book when it comes out. I'm really excited for it. As per usual, please DM me or DM Baron, let him know you came from my podcast. I'm sure he would love that. Grab a copy of my book, 18 and Lost, sign up to my upcoming information night for my new program, and take the Are You Ready for Uni quiz. All the links are in the show notes below. Now, over to AmericanBaron. Perfect. All right, Baron, welcome so much to the podcast.
Byron, thank you so much for having me. I'm a huge fan of your interview style. Like, I watch you on TikTok all the time, and you're just so crisp. It's like, it's just music to my ears, honestly.
Oh, thanks, man. Appreciate that. I had an interview with these 2 girls interviewed me the other day, and they've been listening to my podcast. And they were saying, like, I've noticed in your podcast, Byron, you speak like 40 to 50% of the time. And I was like, I'm glad you say that, because I actually do that intentionally. Like, I try to have it very conversational, so it's like a two-way thing as opposed to just question, answer, question, answer.
Yeah, I actually don't like that. I was thinking this the other day about how there's certain interviewers that were kind of aggressive, like Oprah, Larry King. They were very aggressive interviewers, and I love that about it, because like they really get to the heart of the issue. I think most interviewers these days and podcasters, they just let the host, or let the guest speak, and it can be interesting, but I really like when you keep digging. That's when things get interesting.
Well, do you know what the problem is in this world of just letting a guest speak? Is that, like, I've done quite a few podcasts. If you just let me speak, I would say the same stuff I've said 100 times. And it wouldn't be, like, you could go listen to any other podcast. Whereas if you actually dig deeper, you can get to the stuff that they haven't said before. And that's where the real magic happens, I think.
And that's also how a conversation feels, more or less. It really just feels like a balanced thing where it's not a question and answer situation.
Yeah. And it's funny because I get a lot of people, like maybe a lot of people's assistants will reach out to me before the interview and they'll be like, do you have any questions to prepare? And sometimes I just send them questions just to let their them not freak out, but I don't use them. I just send them some questions. I'm like, nah, I just wing it.
Like my favorite late night host, Craig Ferguson, he would always rip up the cue cards every time. Right before a guest sat down, and like there was always something on the cue cards. Like every night, he was on for like 8 years, and he always just tore it up and winged it.
It's the best way to do it, I reckon. But anyway, let's jump into it. I mean, a little bit of a prologue there. So, I mean, you've built a brand online, which is, you know, how I came across you. I also know your girlfriend who's living in Australia, and we've connected. She's part of our creatives group, who's awesome as well, and she's going to come on the show when we can do it in person, which will be I'm looking forward to a lot. But you know, you put out a lot of content on TikTok. You've over 1 million followers, which is a huge achievement. As you mentioned, like philosophical entertainment almost, like, and really deep storytelling, covering really cool ideas. I'm a huge fan of the way you do it, the storytelling, the visuals, all the aspects of it. Incredibly talented and incredibly intelligent videos as well, which is a fresher breath air on TikTok, because as you and I both know, it's not the most intelligent platform. There's a lot of dull stuff out there. But did you just want to take us through how you got into that? I'd also love to know what you did when you finished high school, and what was like the decision making process.
Two very big questions. Let's go with the TikTok question first, because that's probably more relevant. And it's interesting you say that it's weird that I'm on the app, or it's a breath of fresh air or whatever, because it was such a big leap for me to jump on this app. Actually, my girlfriend, who lives in Sydney, she convinced me to get on here. What happened was I was writing short stories and I had no idea what to do with them. I was never actually trying to get them published. I was never sending them to newspapers or anything. And I was just floating. I was staring at a wall, and my girlfriend, Katrina, said, download TikTok. Don't knock the platform. You know, the thing with these social media apps is they're always stupid at first. They're always, YouTube was a cat video sharing platform. It was really stupid.
Charlie bit my finger.
Like 6-second, 15-second videos. And now it's unheard of for a business to not have a Facebook account, a YouTube account. And so her whole idea was get in early, and it's an investment.
I think because I know Trina, and like I first of all have to say, like, that is very good advice from her, because I was the same as you. I'm not sure when you got on the platform, but it was still weird when I got on it. It was like, you're on TikTok, what? And it was very much still recovering from the brand of Musical.ly. But as you mentioned, that's how everything starts out.
And it's weird because what's interesting, because I remember some creator was talking about why TikTok is becoming so popular, and it's because people were willing to try things. Whereas on Instagram, your mom is following you, your teacher is following you, and it's just a friend group is following you. And on TikTok, you're anonymous, and so
that was me to a T.
Yeah. It was the same.
That was me to a T. I was just like, I can post stuff here. And first of all, my friends aren't even on the platform, really. They're barely on the platform. And I doubt they'll see any of my videos. Well, now they see them because, they've picked up a bit. But it was like a fresh reset. And I could really just like not have to worry about the judgment of other people.
100%. And that anonymity was everything. And I actually think it's harder to create now that you're not so anonymous. We'll get into that. But basically, I downloaded TikTok because my girlfriend convinced me, and the plan was I was going to get a job at an ad agency by the end of last year, and I wanted to make a portfolio, of Geico type ads, and it turned into something else. But the interesting phenomenon of TikTok was that I downloaded it almost as symptomatic of giving up on my dreams. I was like, I'm not going to make movies anymore. I'm not going to write screenplays or write books. I'm just going to quit. I'm going to be a yuppie. That was the plan, yuppie. And it turned into something else. And so basically the one really good thing that worked out was the time I gave up.
It's almost like you use TikTok as like a last resort. It was just like, all right, well, nothing else is working. Let's just give it a go. And to be honest with you, that was the same as me. Like, I was posting for 6 months on Instagram, podcasting clips. I was getting like 10 views a video. Like, I was talking with my mate, now I have videos that get like 10,000 views. I'm disappointed. I'm like, I would have killed for that back when I started.
Yeah.
And I'm disappointed now, which is a whole nother conversation. But yeah, it was the same for me. I was just like, man, I don't know what else to do. 6 months, the podcast had barely grown. I had like no new listeners. I was working on it. It was so much work. And then I just went, it was when COVID hit. And I was like, you know what? I've got some time. Let's try TikTok.
It's a second chance for so many people, for you and me. You know, it was just it's like, here, this is your once in a lifetime opportunity. This is it. Take it or leave it. And wow, thank God we took it, man.
I know. And part of me talks about, like, it was funny because I was on the platform 6 months before I started, just like, you know, just on it. And I had 4 viral videos before I even started posting TikTok content. And I still didn't realize the power of it. It was like just videos with my dog in the background here. And like, we went to this, me and my sister went to this puzzle world in New Zealand where do you know how they do the Lord of the Rings effects? How they have Gandalf really tall and the hobbits really small?
Yeah.
They like tilt the roof and the floor like this, but they tilt it in a way that it looks flat.
Yeah.
And so when you're up here, you look really tall. And when you're down here, you look really small. And I did a TikTok of that and it went viral. And it still took me 6 months to get on the platform. Like, it seems so obvious to start now. But back then it was like, didn't make any sense. But you're right. Thank God we did take it.
Yeah. And I think I really want to pick your brain on what you've learned from when you started to now. But I think I think you would probably agree that it's really about consistency. That's just the key word. I mean, I think when you're a writer, like when I was just writing these short stories and not doing anything with them, you can really hide behind the facade of no one understands me. I'm an artist. You cannot try in that way. And because if you're not going to try, then there's no opportunity for anyone to judge you and reject you and judge you. So I think with TikTok, the sheer amount of volume it takes to just produce, it teaches you so much about the writing. It teaches you so much about the quality. And that was the big revelation for me. It's that quality can come out of quantity, you know?
Oh, dude. I mean, there's that example. I think it was Tim Ferriss or someone did the experiment where he had a classroom, split them into 2 groups. And he said, I want you guys to make me a pot. This group, I want you to make me 100 pots. Give me your best one. This one, spend the entire week on this one pot. Which group had the better pot? You would think the one that spent the entire week on one pot would have the better pot. But really, knock the mic. Really, it was the group that spent 99, because they did one. They're like, okay, let's make a next one. And they learned and learned and learned. By the time they made their 100, it was so much better than all the others.
100%.
It also ties in with episode 65, who's also a friend of Trina, Pace. Do you know Pace Randolph, the musician?
Oh, yeah.
He's in our group, so he's got a following on TikTok as well. But he was the same as you, exactly the same as you. He was making music, song after song after song, but never releasing it. And he was like, and what happened was I set a challenge to write a song every day for 60 days and put it on TikTok. And that's what he did. And his voice got way better. He got a following. People started growing. And then he used it as a testing ground for song content. So if a video went viral, he'd now double down and actually make the whole song. So it was like, I completely agree. Even though I do think there's validity in being a perfectionist, in the modern world of content creation, you can't afford to be that. You've got to be prolific and be consistent.
Yeah, you've got to take the machine gun approach and not like the sniper shot, which we're all so prone to do. We really hide behind perfection as a form of just insecurity, and because we don't want to be tested. And I think comedy was, I started off with doing dad jokes, and I think I was at first branding myself in the comedy genre, and that itself is a pretty interesting experience because comedy is so testing. Yeah, you cannot hide behind the artistry of it. You have to just test it, and if the audience is going to laugh or they're not. And so it's very different from writing a short story or writing a novel where you can just let it sit in a sock drawer. Yeah.
Absolutely. And comedy, as you mentioned, because you said before we started, like, I don't consider myself a comedian because I consider a comedian, Dave Chappelle or, Ricky Gervais, all these people who are like up on stage in front of tens of thousands of people with traditional comedy. Whereas I think for you, have you seen Rick and Morty?
Yeah.
Yeah, so like when I watch Rick and Morty, I don't necessarily laugh out loud, but I enjoy it a lot because the comedy, like there's a scene in Rick and Morty and it's so subtle where he shoots a portal gun and then he goes through it and he comes straight back with a pizza and he's just like, by the way, there wasn't time travel. It was just sitting on the ground.
Oh, crap. I think Arnaldo's is closed. Are you guys sure you want pizza?
Arnaldo's isn't closed in the dimension where they didn't invent daylight savings.
What would we do without you? I love you, Dad.
Love you too, sweetie. By the way, that wasn't time travel. There were just a couple pizzas on the counter. I grabbed them.
Or something. And I found it so funny because it's like you just assume it's time travel and it's like it was not even that funny of a joke, but just little layered stuff. I feel like that's what your content is like.
That would be pretty accurate. I feel like I'm a humorous storyteller as opposed to straight up comedian. Straight up comedian is an intimidating term because you are, Dave Chappelle's a comedian, Bill Burr's a comedian, Ricky Gervais, Nikki Glaser. They're all comedians and they're all amazing and hilarious. And so I don't want to compete against that. I think my stuff is humorous, Wes Anderson-y stuff. Humorous storytelling is probably the best way to put it. And I think someone mentioned how they thought it was funny, but they didn't laugh out loud. They just like, oh, that's a funny thing. That's a funny thought that exists in my head now. And I think that pretty much sums it all up. It's just a humorous thought.
We can't hire you. Why not? Because of your reputation for stealing muffins. You're a thief.
But I steal muffins because I'm hungry.
Why don't you pay for them? I don't have a job.
Why can't you get a job? No one will hire me because I steal muffins.
Then stop stealing muffins.
I can. I'll go hungry.
Then buy something to eat.
I don't have money.
Then get a job.
I can't get a job. I steal muffins to solve the hunger problem. I can never get past the hunger problem.
All of this started because you stole something. We're in a repeating loop here. I beg to differ. All of this started because I was hungry.
Look, if you work here, you just can't steal muffins, okay? Okay.
Have you learned your lesson from stealing all those muffins?
Yeah, I have. Don't get caught.
You could sit there and watch all of your clips and never laugh out loud, but you're still enjoying them. And so that's where you wouldn't say it's not traditional comedy because you're not, laughing out loud, but it's still very entertaining. And, that's where I think we'll drive a lot of this conversation into storytelling and creativity because you said you knew you wanted to go into that space and be a writer. What did you do after high school? Like, did you go study or did you get a job? Like, what was your approach to trying to achieve this goal?
Yeah. So it's interesting because I didn't go to high school. I actually was homeschooled. And
really?
There's a lot to say about being homeschooled. In hindsight, I wish I did experience the high school John Hughes movie, but you can't deny that the integral benefits of being homeschooled. Like, it's a really lonely thing to be homeschooled, and I think that's the worst. But you also get to study whatever you want, toward the end at least. And so I studied psychology, a little bit of philosophy, behavioral economics, and at that point I was experimenting. I went through a really embarrassing phase where I wanted to be a folk singer, and I was writing songs like Bob Dylan. I thought I had my hair all like Bob Dylan, and I dressed all in black. It was a very embarrassing phase, but I think I tried that at first after the high school years. I went right into college. I went right to studying in university. And then I took a year off. I was studying psychology.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. It was one of those things where I didn't know what to study at first, so I picked psychology because it was interesting, and I still didn't decide what.
I can't even tell you how common that exact scenario of psychology is.
Yeah.
Like, my mate, one of my best mates, Joe, you guys would get along really well. He's a phenomenal writer. He actually organized our entire book project, which just came out.
Oh, right.
So he's
I saw
very
that.
talented writer. Yeah, he did psychology for 3 years, and he calls it 3 dead years because all he did was like the bare minimum at university. He just wanted to pass, and he wanted to be a filmmaker, almost very similar to you. He wanted to be a filmmaker, but he was like, I'll get my psychology degree because that'll give me like a safe plan. And then he never ended up making films. And that's where it's like, I want people to take that risk so they don't have to. I don't know. I think you could. You said you took a year off after psychology. I could see a world where you took that year off before you did it, so then you can decide what you want to do with a bit more clarity.
I actually kind of did take a year off. Well, it wasn't I don't know if it was a choice, but I was doing I was really involved with the Boy Scouts at the time. At the time, when you're 18, you're sort of out of Scouts, but at the time I won all the merit badges in Scouts, and the BSA, especially in Missouri, really liked that, and so they were kind of, I was doing a lot of speeches and stuff on behalf of the BSA because I had all these merit badges, and it looked good for my troop, it looked good for the BSA, and so I was sort of on this like speaking thing for like a year before I ever started university, and so I kind of did take a year off before I started and a year off after I started, and in hindsight, I wouldn't have studied psychology. I think that's the mistake. So I thought it was interesting. Everyone's kind of an armchair psychologist.
Yeah.
You think it's a little interesting, but in reality, when you study psychology, it takes away all of your intuitions because it measures your intuitions. It measures all of that casual armchair psychology stuff. And what that does is it puts it into, good scientific terms, but it takes away your intuition and it takes away your love for it as well. So,
well, that's what I've heard. It's very dry, is what I've heard.
Yeah,
it's very like analytical, very dry. Because my girlfriend wants to be a psychologist, and she just got a bachelor's, and you can't even be a psychologist with a bachelor's degree. You need to get your master's in Australia, so it's 5 years, which is a big commitment. And it's like, yeah, she loves psychology, and she still loves psychology, but uni has really, it's been a really big grind for her to get through it, even though she loves the subject. She wants to be a psychologist.
It kind of takes the love away, your love and passion for it away, if you will.
And so it's sad because psychology to me is so important. Like the fact that you got to learn it in high school is so awesome. Like I would have loved to learn that. I think just basic human psychology should be taught in high school. It doesn't have to be advanced, just the fundamentals. And philosophy. I think philosophy is so fascinating. Like, obviously you do as well. Have you studied philosophy, or is it just something you?
It's interesting you say that. I wish I studied philosophy in college. I think if I look back on it, I wish I studied something that was interesting, not something that I thought would get me a job. In hindsight, I wish I did that. Yeah, but. No, I just, philosophy, it's notorious for there's no job at the end of this thing. There's no money at the end of this thing. It's not going to help you. And so, I just didn't pursue it, or I didn't even think of it. And I never studied it formally, which I really regret now because it's very relevant in my stuff. I feel like I'm accidentally writing a lot of philosophical concepts that Aristotle, Kierkegaard came up with centuries ago, and I'm waiting for the day a psychology or a good philosophy student or a philosophy professor is gonna look at my stuff and be like, "Oh, this guy he doesn't know anything about philosophy. He's a He got this all off Reddit or something."
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing about philosophy is because again, similar to you, it was probably the one thing I would like to study formally, but I just feel like formally studying might crush my love for it. I looked for like alternative. Are there anyone who offer like a one-on-one mentoring philosophy would be amazing if that was some. I'm sure someone would offer that out there, but like it's right here. There's a great book I recommend, How the World Thinks, which is like a philosophy introduction to philosophy. She analyzes like China, India, Japan, and ancient Greece philosophers, and she just says it's almost endless. You could study it for the rest of your life, and you still. People would still argue you don't know that much about it. Like it's such a complicated thing. But on your point of there's no job at the end of it, I agree. But like I think you can work similar to we both have. You can weave philosophy throughout messaging, storytelling, and so much of what you want to do in life.
100%. I mean, it's so much more relevant than I thought. Like even if you actually went into a job, like you'd be an idiot to think philosophy isn't extremely relevant to technology. This whole AI question is just one big philosophical existential question that you have to sort out. And I think if we all had a psychology degree, we'd wind up a little more safe. But it's also, I think when you get a guy like me, maybe you, when we don't study philosophy formally, but we're really interested in it and we dabble in it. I think what you do get oftentimes are philosophy books that are essentially rebranded and repackaged versions of the Stoics or of Aristotle's train of thought. And I don't know how I feel about that, because I do think you should study the fundamentals first. What do you think about that?
No, I agree. That's why I got this book. I bought a book on like ancient Greece and going into Aristotle and all that. And my mum said, read this first.
Yeah.
Because it's an overview. It analyzes, Daoism and different cultures and how they connect together and Western society and all that. And I still find it difficult to read. I'm not the best reader of heavy stuff. Like, I feel like I speak as simply as I can. I use as many stories as I can because I know my audience are teenagers. And so I try not to use advanced wording and complex. And I do that intentionally because I know that's how people learn. And I think it's probably because in high school, I struggled to learn because they didn't wrap it up in stories. They just read from a textbook. And like economics for me was the most difficult thing ever, just highlighting in a textbook. And so, yeah, I think for me, I do agree with that. But I haven't gone. I don't think I've got enough experience in philosophy to talk on that. I've only just been reading a few books.
Yeah,
watched
honestly,
videos.
I couldn't use any of the lingo either. Honestly, I use nihilism very flippantly, and I think any professor on Nietzsche would be turning over in his grave if he ever saw my videos, because that's I feel like I really abuse it. But to your point, I also studied economics by myself when I was homeschooled, and yeah, it was pretty turgid, and I was always much more attracted to the economics comic books. A lot of times, some genius artists would come up with a whole comic book explaining economic theory, and it was so much better. It was fun, and I think that's more valuable. If you can understand, if you can have fun with it. Who cares if you don't get the dense stuff, Well,
that's what we say in Empower You, this program I help run. Games are a reflection of life. And how we live life. How we play games is how we play life. And so everything we do is wrapped in games. And the example I've used a few times on this podcast is let's say you're learning about World War II. You could read from a textbook like I did, or the teacher could go, all right, you guys are Germany, you guys are America, you guys are Anzacs. All right, it's 1939. Germany just attacked America. What do you guys do? You've got 20 seconds to figure out. Oh crap, we did this. All right, we attacked Germany, whatever. And you role play it, and it's like, that's fun. They're gonna remember it. It's just such a better environment, and that's where it's like, I teach so many topics and subjects to young people, but I'm not an expert in any of them. But I've spent the past 24 months studying how to present and how to storytell and how to keep them engaged with NLP and anchoring and, making sure we have breaks. Like Empower You is 24 hours straight presenting. It's 12 hours, 9 o'clock to 9 o'clock at night. The next day, 9 o'clock to 9 o'clock at night. Right. And we've got kids as young as 12 years old sometimes there, and we have to keep them engaged. And so every single second is, planned out to how do we keep these kids engaged. And then you go into a classroom and the professor walks in, does a PowerPoint, and then walks out. And I'm like, this just doesn't seem right.
I love it. Don't you love it when they read from the PowerPoint?
Yeah.
Oh, that's my favorite.
Like a laser pointer.
Yeah, the little laser pointer, and then they're reading what you can see on the PowerPoint. And it's like, oh, thank you. Thank you for assuming we can't read. I do appreciate that. But, I think, didn't Disney say that he would much rather entertain than educate, because you're going to educate through entertainment?
But this is where you come in. This is where, even though you're not an expert philosopher or anything, you know enough of basics to get across some cool videos, and those videos get seen by millions of people versus someone who writes a paper which gets read by 20 people.
I agree.
And so it's
I agree.
What's more valuable?
Like there's this guy on TikTok and Instagram. He I kind of want to give him a shout out. If I'm going to look him up, but he basically is he's a philosophy professor. He's not actually just some guy on TikTok. His name is Julian de Medel Rios. Julian de Medel Rios. He is an actual philosophy professor, and he retired, or he quit the university system, and he's completely online now. Now he offers courses on Patreon. That's the guy.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, this guy's amazing. He essentially, all he does is stitch viral videos or lectures, and then he'll just explain it to you. And it's like, oh my God, this is amazing. Yes, I wish I learned philosophy this way.
The fact that I'm going to die one day and that everyone around me is going to die and no one will remember me after a certain point makes me feel so good.
Okay, so what Billy's describing here is basically what Nietzsche calls active nihilism. And it's the opposite of passive nihilism. Passive nihilism is when you realize that nothing means anything. Nothing is made to last. And so you become paralyzed and depressed. It's like you have the will to nothing because you realize that nothing will mean anything. However, the opposite of this, according to Nietzsche, is active nihilism. Active nihilism is when you realize that precisely because nothing means anything, precisely because nothing is made to last, precisely because no one will remember what you are doing right now, that is why you are free. It becomes the condition of your liberation. You realize that you can do anything you want. You can be anybody you want to be. You can live a free life because it means nothing. And I love that Billy gets that. It's the opposite of pessimistic nihilism, and it's the beginning of a wonderful, fruitful, creative, optimistic nihilism.
And so that's what I mean. It's like I think we need to be focusing on presenting and engaging skills rather than content. It's like, look,
100%.
Just because this person has 30, and the other problem is if you've got a professor who's been in it for 30 years, he is so disconnected from what it was like to learn it. It's like he's been saying it for 30 years. And so, I think they need to prioritize keeping classrooms engaged, and I've done entire episodes on this where like people who have studied this in like brain cognitive science and stuff. It's very fascinating.
I was actually going to mention something about like cognitive psychology. Like Steven Pinker did this fascinating experiment where he would show a bunch of kids like a box of M&Ms, and inside were pencils, and he asked the kids, what do you think are in this box of M&Ms? And they said M&Ms, and he shows them, and it's pencils, right? And then he said, all right, now I'm going to show this box to the kids in the other room. What do you think those kids are going to say when I show them this box? And they all said pencils. They couldn't fathom, they couldn't work it out in their head that the other kids are going to make the same mistake they did at first. They just looked at what they knew and extrapolated from that. And they said, oh, I know there's pencils in there, therefore they're going to know there's pencils in there. That's the problem with academia. These professors, they understand the material very, very well. They know what's going on, and there's this subconscious assumption that you're going to know what's going on as well, because they're simply extrapolating. Yeah. And in that regard, an argument could be made that the less of an understanding, or like a more casual understanding of philosophy that you have, it could be that you're going to present it a little more simply because you're not going to be as dense, or anything. Yeah, anything.
Like I do 2-hour workshops on money and finance. I'm not a financial expert. I'm just teaching them compounding interest, basics, how money flows. And I tell stories of the Avengers. I wrap in money stories that connects with Thanos, and I get everyone like, who's the main character in Avengers? They're like, Thanos. And then I tie in all these stories about delayed gratification and how important that is. And that's all, you don't have to be a financial expert to teach, especially for me who's teaching young people, because they just need they need the top, the most important 5%. They don't need to know all the other stuff yet. Right. And I love that Steven Pinker thing. I feel like we could analyze that for ages. That would also be like, I've seen stuff, just because you think you know something, you assume other people do. That could tie in with a vaccine, with everything that's going on in the world right now. I mean, something I think, and is a big philosophical thing, is something this generation has to navigate is the overwhelming amount of information. Other generations didn't have this information, but the problem is there's so much information out there that anything you believe to be true, you can find information online to justify and back up your belief. I saw this TikTok of a guy, I don't know if you saw it as well, but he was saying his point. He's like, I bet if I Google coffee causes blindness, and he Googles it, he's like, coffee causes blindness. And he goes, what if I Google coffee is good for your eyesight? And he Googles it, and guess what? Coffee is good for your eyesight.
Dude, I'm 29. I'm more confused than I ever have been. We live in a time where you have access to so much information, but the problem is there's so much information that you can find any information that backs up whatever you believe or whatever your claim is, so you're always right. But you don't know if you're actually right. Just think of anything. You can prove it if you want. Like, I'm in the line to get a coffee. I can bet you I can find that coffee causes blindness. I'll Google it right now. Coffee causes blindness. Watch. Oh, looky here. More than 3 cups a day can contribute to glaucoma. Now watch. I'll look up if coffee can contribute to better eyesight. Oh, look, it can prevent against deteriorating eyesight and possible blindness. I mean, which is it, dude? Experts are like, oh, I don't know why anxiety's at an all-time high. Hey, maybe because I can't even sit down and enjoy a cup of Joe without wondering if I'm going to go blind or not. Who turned out the lights?
Yeah.
So it's just like, that's where I really promote, critical thinking and really questioning, being able to question a lot of things. You'd be like, is this actually true? Just because I've seen one piece of information on it, is this true? And really have a think about it.
That's the Canadian guy who was in the car in line at Tim
Yeah.
I saw that guy. Yeah, he was hilarious. It's frustrating because there is way too much information to even swallow, and you can kind of believe anything you want at this point. Like, to his point, that was like the whole point of his skit, I guess. But yeah, this is kind of why I don't like it when people assume if you don't have an opinion, you're dumb or that you're shallow. And I don't like that at all, because they're pressuring you to have an opinion you don't really know too much about. And now they're pressuring you to have an ill-informed opinion. So I'm actually very much in favor of this no opinion movement that is very small. Everyone has an opinion, but whatever
Dude,
that is, sign me up. I'll join that club.
I agree. Like, I've always said, like, if I get asked a question that's out of my wheelhouse, I just say, I don't know, sorry. It's like I can share some of my opinions or something, but it's like, often I'll just be like, look, honestly, I'm not too sure. There's nothing wrong with admitting you don't know, or I don't have enough information to comment on that. Because especially in the world of cancel culture, all it takes, because, I've experienced so much negativity around clips that are taken out of context from the podcast.
Yeah.
So I'll post a 40-second clip and people haven't seen the first 30 minutes, and so they don't have any context, and they often will make judgments based on that. And so I'm very careful of what I say, because it's like, if I don't have the opinions or enough facts to back this up, I don't want to say anything and then risk getting myself in trouble.
Oh, it's so they're so brutal with that. I mean, I was telling this guy who was planning on writing a science fiction novel catered to a male readership that you are going to face hell and high water, because you have to get every single detail and every single thing in the mechanics of your world have to be completely accurate, because science fiction readers are going to come after you so hard if even one tiny mechanical thing is off about your story. And so that's symptomatic of social media in general, because we can look anything up with a few clicks, we're all somehow experts, and that's good. But yeah, sure. But a lot of times it kind of can interrupt the flow of a conversation. Like, we're having a conversation now, and if we're arguing about the facts of something, well, now we have to look it up, and now that destroys the train of thought.
Well, that's actually a term called the Google effect.
Oh, well, there we go.
It's where, like, let's say you're watching a movie, right? And you go, who's that actor? And you go, oh, wasn't he from Ocean's 11? Oh, what's his name? And you're like, he's from this, and you're having this conversation. Now what happens? Who's that actor? Bang, Google, George Clooney.
Yeah.
And so you miss there's a lot of magic in the unknown, I think.
The Irish brawl, like the Irish bar
Yeah,
fight.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I think there is a lot of, ignorance is bliss in a lot of cases. You don't need to know all this information. And I do, obviously the COVID has just shined a light on that even more. When people say, I'm going to go research a vaccine, they mean they're going to Google a few things and find beliefs that support what they want to see, as opposed to actually researching. But I did want to shift gears and talk a bit more about storytelling, because I know there's a lot of people who are probably creatives on this listening to this podcast. Yeah. You want to be a storyteller. You started on TikTok. You mentioned you're doing like dad jokes and stuff. How did you get to the point where now you're creating these, like really advanced skits with multiple camera angles and cuts, and you're wearing wigs and alien faces and all this stuff. Like, what was the process like, and what does the process of creating a video look like for you?
So it really was, you kind of fell into it. I kind of fell into doing what I wanted to do. At first, I didn't want to do that. At first, I just picked up a joke book from a Prairie Home Companion, and I just started performing these, very well-known dad jokes. And I didn't want the pressure of having to come up with something new, original, every day.
Yeah, I just bought a new hearing aid.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, it's about $3,000, state of the art.
Nice. What kind is it?
It's about 4 o'clock.
Because the combination, and back then I was posting 3 times a day, and the combination was, rapidly posting as much as you can. So I didn't want the pressure. And then at some point, I kind of got interested. I was like, well, hang on. I can rework that joke. Here's a dad joke, but I can rework it. And then once you started adding to it, once you started changing to it, it became a whole new thing. And that's how it started. And then it became a lot more satisfying to do your own thing than to just read a script from a dad joke. And that's when, and then people responded well to it. And I think the irony of it all is that people respond so well to what you are personally passionate about. Like my two most viewed videos are issues that I'm extremely passionate about. Like these are I put so much of a personal touch into these videos, and yet they got the most views. And so it's like I wasn't even thinking of virality at all, And
that's, I feel like, people can just feel your energy when you're passionate about something.
They can.
And that comes through even on the screen. That's something I get fired up when I talk about, just learning, and a lot of this conversation, to be honest, gets me quite fired up in a good way. Just like it's stuff I want to talk about because I think, education, in my opinion, I think we can solve a lot of the world's problems if we educate the next generation better.
And I think it's about self-education I think a little more important in that regard than the institutions. I don't know how we get there, but I'm actually kind of encouraged by Gen Z. Boomers and millennials can say all they want. I'm really encouraged by how conscientious they are about doing the right thing. I remember being that age. I was not conscientious. All I wanted to do was have fun. And yes, Gen Z is a little more depressed and anxious than previous generations, but man, they really care about political issues. They really care about educating themselves. And to me, that's a great sign. So I think Gen Z will save us is my answer to that.
It is exciting. And I see a lot of jokes saying, can't wait until millennials and Gen Z are, in politics and in parliament, as opposed to 70-year-old white men who grew up in 1960. I think that's funny, but also there's a level of truth to that. I think it'll be a world that's far more equal. And then there's the whole philosophical thing. It's like, are older people bad because of their beliefs? But it's a world they grew up in was very different. Like, would we be any better had we grown up in their time? Would we be equally as racist and sexist if we grew up in the early 1900s?
I don't think so.
Probably.
Yeah, I don't think we would be better than them.
Exactly.
I think the environment would have just caused us to act accordingly, because that's what happens most of the time anyway, right?
I saw a thing, and she said this. She was just like, okay, who here thinks racism is bad? Yep. All right, who here would speak out against racism? Yeah, 100%. Everyone put their hands up. Who here is willing to speak out against a very topical issue right now or something? Like, who's here ready to speak against it? And she worded it better than I did, and no one put their hands up.
Right.
And it's just like, because you're trying, you've got to put yourself in their shoes. And there's a lot to unpack there, but I think, just by having a bit more empathy, yes, obviously it's still bad, but understanding it was a different world they were in. But yeah, it's Gen Z.
I was thinking of that today, though. You bring up empathy and age. It's a weird combination. Empathy goes down with age. First of all, with age, you're less empathetic, but you're also less empathetic to older people. I was just thinking about how, 40-year-olds really have it tough, because a 40-year-old has much less, will experience and garnish much less empathy than a 24-year-old. If you're 15, if you're 24, you make mistakes, and people can understand that you make mistakes. If you're 40 years old, no one quite thinks, well, they were abused as a child. They grew up in a very rough neighborhood. They went to jail in their 20s, and now they just got out, and now they're here. No, all you see is like someone who made mistakes, but you don't really apply that level of judgment to someone younger. So, it's just it's so unfortunate. But I think I would ask that younger people definitely apply a bit more compassion to the older generations, because it's really not as simple as you're racist, you're a sexist, you're this or that. They grew up in at a very different time, and you probably would not have fared or come out much better if you were in their position,
Agree. And I think the other issue, I've been saying this for a while. I haven't had anyone else say this, but I genuinely believe we are living through the biggest generational disconnect in human history and the future of all humans. Like, the disconnect between me and my grandfather is insane.
Yeah.
As in, he lived in New Zealand on a farm. For his birthday, he got an orange. He was one of 11 children. In terms, I can't even explain to my grandparents what I do. I doubt you can either. Like, I'm a podcaster who does this online stuff. Like, what?
Yeah.
They can't comprehend it. And I think because we live now in the world of information, old people used to be where we went for information because they knew everything. They were wise. But now we don't have that. And so maybe they're feeling kids aren't going to the old people for information. Like, to be honest, I struggle to talk to my grandma because she just doesn't understand the world at all, really. It's difficult to have conversations with her.
It's at a certain point, you just stop learning. That's how you grow old, That's the theme. At a certain point, you stop adapting, and you stop learning. And it's an unfortunate thing, because it does seem like they become stuck in one era, and they can't move forward from there. They can't even comprehend that there's this device called a phone, that there's this thing called a podcast. It's like radio. What's radio? Oh my God, you're old. So, I don't know how to gap it, but I feel like we're gonna come across some crappy older people in the next couple of years. Like, I remember some comedian was mentioning that, how, all these older people are gonna have such crappy photos. Here's like 9 pictures of my avocado toast. Here's here's a selfie of grandma when she was young. There's 9 of them. Here's grandma doing the WAP. That's cool.
Yeah, it is going to be very interesting. But I guess my question to you on this topic would be, because I believe, the generation that grew up Back to the Future, right?
Yeah.
They were like, 2015, hoverboards.
Yeah.
We don't have to type our own laces. The future is so exciting. It's bizarre to me that, the parents of that generation, aka our grandparents, haven't adopted technology. Like, to me, I feel like I'll adopt technology until I die, because it's so exciting and like new stuff is coming out.
Yeah.
But they seem to have just stagnated, a lot of them. Like, they know how to use an iPad. That's kind of it. And I'm not sure if that's because of the way they grew up, or maybe it's just too much for them. I'm not too sure.
I like, learning is hard. Like, this has to do with, neuroplasticity and all that, but it gets harder with age, certainly. But it requires a certain amount of energy that with age you don't necessarily have. And I think there's a lot of theories behind why older people will stay the way they are, and that why they stop adapting. But I think the way I see it is just they get to a point where they need to justify their life. And one way of justifying it is just by pretending things are the same, or at least by wanting things to be the same. And by not adapting, and by not learning, because it's harder to learn. They don't want to be tested. They don't want to face that stress, or that they don't want to face that judgment, the self-judgment of learning and failing. They have to justify their life somehow, so they just don't even touch the technology. They don't even touch the thing that they can't learn, right?
Mm.
So that's my theory on it. I don't know. I know that's a very Reddit theory, but
Yeah. No, I think change as well. Not all humans love change.
No.
I think, especially once you're older, it's probably getting exhausting. I don't know how we got to there.
yeah. I don't know how we got there, but yeah.
Going back to storytelling, what is your process for storytelling? How have you learned about storytelling? You mentioned it before, which is an important take. You weren't releasing anything to the world, and by TikTok, it allowed you to just keep putting out content.
Yeah.
So you grew better. But like, what is storytelling to you, and how do you approach it as a topic?
Well, I started off being very artsy about it, and I would spend like a month or 2 months on one short story, and it was really, it's not good. I would not advise that at all. Do not be a perfectionist. Perfectionism is a toxic trait. It'll kill creativity. And what I've learned with TikTok and the storytelling process in general is that you have to just try and write as if no one is watching, as if no one's going to read it. Just do it for yourself, because that's where interesting things happen. Now you're experimenting. And if you're writing at volume, which is something most writers don't start off doing, they like to take the target shot. They like to take the sniper shot and be very, very, very careful. And they have this whole quality over quantity thing going on in their head. And in reality, it's quantity leads to quality. If you keep writing, if you keep stress testing your stuff by putting it out to an audience, like on social media, perfect place to do it, you're going to learn a lot quicker than you will thinking to death the perceived perfection of one story or of one piece. It's about volume. It's about turning it out and not judging yourself. I think if you spend too much time on one project, you're going to judge yourself to death, and the perfection will kill you.
Also, let's say you spend 3 weeks on one video and it flops on TikTok, you'll be gutted.
You'll be gutted.
All your expectations are way too high. Whereas if you take 2 days to make a video, which is still a long time, and you post it and it flops, it sucks, but it's not as hurtful. And I mean, we can probably both talk about expectations and stuff, because that's been huge.
I found I was busy making the next one to even care about how the last one did.
Yeah.
And that was a very healthy headspace to be in creatively. It doesn't exactly last. You'll burn out, but man, it was great for the creative juices. The ideas were coming, and you could hardly write them down. They were coming so fast. And so there's a certain momentum that you have to find. The first 10 minutes, man, that's what Stephen King says, right? When you sit down to write a novel, when you sit down to write in general, it's that first, you got to get past that first 10 minutes. It smells like a dead fish. And then you start getting something, and it's like a train. You just start to, you find a momentum, you find a rhythm, and then you're going. That's flow. And so many writers quit before they find their flow. It's a shame.
It really is, because I think creativity in writing, I believe, is the future. It's going to be such a valuable skill as AI and technology gets more and more advanced. Creativity, design, that's what people are looking for. I think, what's his name? Kevin O'Leary from Shark Tank. Yeah, I mean, I don't know he's got a lot of businesses, but he's like, I saw a TikTok and he's like,
I used to say, the only degree you want, number 1 is engineering, number 2 is engineering, and number 3 is engineering. Here's what I'm saying now. Writers, videographers, editors. Why? Because the entire world has gone digital.
If you asked me who I would employ 10 years ago, I would have said number 1, an engineer, number 2, an engineer, and number 3, an engineer.
Yeah.
And now he's like, but now I want creatives, I want storytellers, I want videographers who can help get the brand out there and build on social media. And he's like, that's where I think the future of the workforce is going. So the skill is, even though it's not as tangible, it's like, well, what can I do as a writer? I could write a book and make money, or could I write for, comedy skits? It's not very linear and it's difficult. Do you think marketing and the ability to understand platforms is an important skill creatives should develop?
It's the skill. Oh, are you saying for companies, for other people?
No, individuals.
Individuals. It's the thing. I mean, this is the stopping point of pretty much all any creative artists. I mean, you have this album, you have this book, you have a script. Now what? The now what question kills you. And social media has allowed you to go around the agents, to go around the gatekeepers, if you will. And now you have the now what question. Like that social media can answer the now what question. You can literally make a living as a poet because of social media. But if you don't, you got to learn the marketing. That's really the hardest part. It's funny that I also saw that Kevin O'Leary TikTok, and it's funny that we keep exchanging TikToks. And I think in the old days, it would have been like, oh, did you read that article? Or did you read that book? Did you read this book?
Yeah.
And it's so cool that we can just start exchanging TikToks, and we know which ones we're talking about, and we can talk about the ideas behind them. And it's like, I really don't like it when people knock a platform, because TikTok, yes, as stupid as it might be, it's a form of spreading and disseminating information. This is a bit like the Gutenberg Bible. This was a technological breakthrough which gave people a way to disseminate information. What's TikTok? It's the exact same thing to an extent. Like it's now it's on your phone, and it's not in text. It's in video form, right? It's just a way of spreading information. So
I've learned so much from TikTok.
Oh.
Like I have I favorite I favorite usually educational videos and stuff I want to use. I have my favorites folder is so valuable. Like I go through these quotes that I love because I do so much presenting now. I'm always looking for new stories I can tell. Like your Steven Pinker story, I'm already going to use that. Yeah. Like I'm always looking for stories I can find, and like the way I do it, I build up a bank in my head where I've got all these stories and analogies I can use and pull out, which is it's taken me a while to get, and I'm always constantly building to. I've actually got a whole Notion board of all stories and analogies I use. That's awesome. And I think when it comes to marketing, as sad as it is, you could be the most talented person ever, and I don't think that's enough nowadays.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of people say, Byron, I can't listen to any podcast, but I love your podcast. I've had so much positive feedback about my podcast. I didn't know my podcast was good until episode 24, because that's when TikTok took off. Right. Because I didn't have that many listeners, and it's like, had I not gone on TikTok, I still don't think I'd have many listeners, despite the fact that my podcast would be as good as it is now. And so I just think you can work on your craft, you can be an artist, you can be a writer, but you do need to develop some skills in marketing. You do need to go on TikTok, get on these platforms, understand the language. Like I can already think of 5 videos from this clip, like the Steven Pinker, that's a TikTok. Is TikTok a Bible? You just compared it to a Bible. I already see the headline for that. That's a TikTok. I see them everywhere. Like that's how my brain thinks in TikToks now, because it's all marketing.
There are worse ways to think, honestly. I mean, it's incredible. It's an incredible tool. Like I remember some motivational speaker, I think it was, I forget who, but a lady came up to him and said, "Hey, I wrote a novel. Literary agents, they won't pick it up. What do I do from here?" And he said, "Take a marketing course, because everyone hits this point. You have a business. You started a restaurant. It's a marketing. Everyone is in the marketing game. Like everyone is selling something, and people forget that. They always think it's about the quality of the product, which it is. It really is, but it's also more. I'm convinced that if people understood how much work it actually took, not as many people would give up.
Dude, this is exactly. I think. Wait, not as many people would give up?
No, I don't think so. I think if people understood the limit, this is how hard you have to work, and it was it was this massive whale to swallow. But if they knew where it was, it's they'd adjust to that. They would adapt to it. But
that's interesting, because something we've spoken about in other episodes with Dale, actually, the musician. He's like, if I had known how hard it was to make it in the musician industry, I never would have started.
Wow.
And I was kind of the same with a podcast. If I'd known how hard it was to grow a podcast from scratch to an audience of people who aren't even on podcasting yet, I never would have started.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's being hopelessly naive and, ambitious, I think has value. But to your point as well, they're both valid.
I can see your point as well, because I'm actually having trouble starting a YouTube channel, because I know how much work it actually takes. takes the breath out of you. But I feel like most people, I don't know about most. Let's go with some. We'll go with some. Some people, they will post one thing. They'll post two things, and it gets like 2 views, and then they quit. They're like, oh, we're done. It flopped. I'm not popular. No one likes me. And it's like, no, that's not how it works. You have to, if they knew how much videos they had to post, if they knew how many songs they had to write to even kind of get noticed, they'd keep going. But the fact that they like trickled in, they like tried a little bit, and then they like pulled back because there was no response from that. That's symptomatic of they're scared of the unknown. They're not scared of failure. Well, they're scared of failure, yes, but they're mostly scared of the unknown because they don't know.
And I think they are comparing themselves to the very minute amount of people who did go mega viral. Like Billie Eilish went viral off her song.
Yes.
And they're comparing themselves to her. It's like, no, most musicians made hundreds of songs before they got big.
Like Elvis was out there for years. Like the example I always like to pull up was Bernie Sanders, who was out here since the 70s and the 80s, saying pretty much the exact same message as he is saying today, right? He's preaching the exact same thing. Suddenly, out of nowhere, 2016, he's Bernie Sanders. Like he's this megastar now, out of nowhere.
Oh, overnight success.
Yeah, right. Overnight success. Yeah, it's not. There's no way he was an overnight success. It's somehow the market was somehow ready for him, but they don't know that he was out here since the 80s and 70s, just preaching out here. You know. So,
but that's the mindset creative people have to have. Like you have to go in, create content for yourself, and if it goes viral, then great. You're like, that's cool. And look, there is an argument for if you've posted 300 videos, and maybe you should pivot and try something else. But like, I agree. I see people all the time. They post a few videos and they give up. Podcasting is the biggest example. The amount of people I know who are like, oh, I don't want to start a podcast because everyone's starting a podcast. Correct. Everyone is starting a podcast. Very few people maintain it, however. 85% of podcasts don't make it past 7 episodes. 7. That's it. You make it past 7 episodes, you're in the top 85% of podcasters. Because it's so fun, it's so sexy, it's so exciting to start. But once you have to do it every single week, find new guests, do it. It's the hype of it dies down. People give up, and it's in the almost going back to our very first message of this podcast. It's in the consistency.
It's in the consistency, and the trick to find a consistency you like and not get tired of it is really just to choose your suffering, choose how you want to torture yourself, because it's all torture. It's all miserable. You're gonna find misery in the thing you love the most if you do it long enough. So, I think people make the mistake of finding someone they love and think, all right, what are the qualities that I like in this person? I think the better question to ask is, what are the, deal breakers that I'm actually okay with? Are they a messy person? Am I actually okay with that? Yeah, I'm okay with that actually. Do they lie? Am I okay with that? Nah, not so much, right? But a lot of people can overlook the red flags that they actually would not be okay with because they think it's justified, the qualities will justify it. And in reality, everyone will like a happy person. Everyone likes a funny person. All right. It's not, qualities are not hard to like. Flaws are hard to like. Everyone has flaws. Find the flaws you like in a person. And it's the same way with finding something to be consistent at, which is the formula for success, right? You find something, you find the flaw, you find the torture and the suffering that you're okay to bear. And to me, there's not much else to it. It's consistency and that, and loving what you do.
It's true. Like, I'm sure you've spent hours grinding, editing, setting up tripods for shot because you shoot all your videos. You've got to set up every single shot. Same with me. Like I'll set editing. For me, editing my clips isn't exciting anymore because I've done like 2,000 videos now. Yeah, it's just like, it's not exciting for me anymore, but I have to do it because I have to maintain it. And I do outsource different parts of it, and I do try to streamline my process. But, ultimately I do enjoy the podcast. Like I enjoy this part for sure. But the content, I freaking hate social media. It's such a grind. Like it's such a grind. So much work involved. And for potentially no return. Like
you're not unless you're on YouTube, you're not exactly getting paid for it.
I don't
It's
even get paid
really
in
just-
Australia. We don't have a creator fund here.
Oh, right.
I haven't made a single dollar from TikTok.
Forgot about that. Ooh.
I'm missing. I've had like 130 million views over the past 12 months. I don't even want to guess how much money I've missed out on by not having the creator fund. But it's like, you know, and of course I love what I do, and I live with my parents, so I'm minimizing costs and everything. But yeah, it's just,
well,
it's consistent and sacrifice.
It's consistency and sacrifice. And a little story time. When I was about, I think I was about 20, I tried to start a business where I was trying to sell these coupons. I designed a little coupon door hanger. I copied it. It wasn't my design. I pretty much copied it from a competitor. And I was going to hang these door hanger coupons on 10,000 neighborhoods in my city. So I needed to go to businesses and say, hey, you want to advertise on my door hanger? It'll be this much a month. I'll get 20 businesses to do it. I had a whole business plan, right? So I went cold calling to all these local businesses in my city, and I probably knocked on about 15 doors, and then I was done. I was done. I was sick of it. And it's not that it was hard. It was, but it was really that I knew someone who was in my position loves this, and they're going to beat me. Someone, I don't know who, some crazy schlemiel loves knocking on doors and getting rejected and just looking past the rejection because they just love that one yes that they need. It's not me. I'm not the guy. And I knew that
they love the game.
They love the game, and whoever loves the game is going to beat me. So I thought, okay, that was a huge learning lesson, because it's like, stick with something you love because you're going to last longer than the guy who doesn't love it.
Yeah, well, I talk about that in my chapter in the book. I create 2 fake characters, and one of them goes to be a doctor for the wrong reasons. He wants to be a doctor for status, for money, because it makes him look good. And I say, you can't compete with someone who's passionate.
No.
It's like you might be at the last 5-6 years studying, you might be good at like assignments and stuff, but like once you get long term, you're never going to be able to compete with a doctor who loves helping people, who's fascinated by chemistry and bodies and wants to like always learn what's going on, versus someone who's just doing it for the status and to have doctor in front of their name.
100%.
It's like you just can't compete with them.
No.
No matter, I think you can compete with them for a short amount of time, but not long term, which is, as you mentioned, the first 15 wasn't painful enough to make you quit, but it made you realize, if I'm going to be doing this for a long time, I can't compete.
You can't compete, and you're going to fall back into who you are. Like, you can't really I have this maybe pessimistic view of the world that you can't escape who you are. You are you, and as much as you'd like to be different, as much as you'd like to run away from home, you're going to be drawn back into home. You're going to come back into yourself eventually, and I realized I couldn't escape myself. I am the kind of guy that hates this. I'm the kind of guy that likes to just sit and come up with stuff from my imagination, and I should stick to that, because that's something I love, and that's something I'm good at. And I was telling you earlier that how I was actually, like, I would say addicted to self-help books, to self-help in general. I was addicted to it, and at a certain point, I realized fiction, plays, novels, movies, they are essentially doing what these self-help books are doing, but I think in a better way.
Dude, we're so similar. Like, let me go grab it. I don't know if you saw my Instagram story.
Do it. Yes.
I just finished a huge fantasy series I've been reading for like 6-7 months. It's called The Way of Kings, or Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. 4 million words. It was a monster. Each book is like huge, and I just finished it. And because I've written, I just wrote. I don't think this is a self-help book. It's just like stories for young people, but people consider me in the self-help industry. I think a lot of people have this preconceived idea that I'm always reading books, and I do read some, but I love fiction. Yeah. And once you've read enough self-help, you can identify the lessons in the fiction. Yeah. So you get the stories and the fun. And it's just like, I think fiction is incredible. I wish more people would read fiction as opposed to being like, oh, so what book did you read? And it has to be like self-help. It has to be learning. It's like, oh, I read a book. Yeah. Like, fiction is beautiful.
I mean, this is how drama was invented in Greece. You know, the only forms of drama were tragedy and comedy. I think it was mostly tragedy because the Greeks thought that you could learn much more from tragedy than from comedy. You could learn from sadness and from sorrow and from negative emotions than from happier comedic emotions. The whole point of drama was to essentially live a simulation where you didn't have to face the results. You didn't have to face the consequences that characters in a drama face. And you can learn the life lesson without having to die in the end. And that was the point of drama. That was how it was invented. And so that doesn't go away. You know, that is what storytelling is. It's a simulation. And by the end of it, you know, even if it's not meant to teach you anything, you still come out learning something.
Absolutely. And I'm a big fan of fiction. I think it's also, I think reading, people like, oh, but I can just watch it on TV, and you can. And I think, you know, I love filmmaking, but the thing about fiction and reading fiction is you hear the inner monologue of the characters. Yeah. And you don't get that in TV shows, unless it's like a TV show like You. Have you seen You?
I love You. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's, you hear his inner monologue, right?
Yeah.
But that's pretty rare. But in the books, you hear what's going on in their head and how they're perceiving things. And I feel like it's just a very different experience to read a book than to watch it on the big screen.
It's, to me, I always saw it as a form of meditation. I saw a meme that was like, books are so weird. We're just staring into dead trees, hypnotizing ourselves.
Dude, I saw the same meme.
we have the same, I think we have the same Instagram feed, but it's essentially the same thing. You know, it's a different experience. It's not, I don't think one is superior to the other. They're just different. They're just different. One kind of hypnotizes you. The other, you know, makes you feel things.
I mean, if you want to be a creative or a writer, you should be reading as well, because the more stories you read, the more perspective and different authors you can learn from. But also, I think reading is important for young people, because reading is almost the only time where it's all I'm doing. If I'm watching a movie, I'm also working. I'm also on my phone. Whereas reading, you can't go on your phone while you're reading. You've just got to sit there and read. And that's almost something I really value in today's world, because it's very rare that I just sit there without having music or sound and just read. And I value that a lot. Like I mute my notifications. I hate when I'm reading, I hear ding, ding, ding. Like I just mute them. And
it takes you out of that trance, you know?
It is, as you mentioned, almost a form of meditation or relaxation of some sort.
I mean, Stephen King's famous line was, well, what is writing? Hypnosis, of course. And what he was talking about was that flow of that you get when you're writing, and you're just so focused on it. Nothing else in the world exists. That's your flow state. And I think your flow state also exists in reading as well. What is reading? Hypnosis. And because you're so involved in it, and it's just, to me, I find it amazing that humans can do that. We can imagine a world that doesn't exist, and we can look past the fact that none of this is real. That to me is amazing.
It's unbelievable, because like Lord of the Rings, right? I've grown up knowing that story. And so dwarves and, you know, elves, they were never new to me. It's just part of how I've grown up. So it wasn't like, wow, these are new creatures. It's like almost like an animal that you just know, because I've just grown up with that. Yeah. But having read this series, and he's created this entire new world, I'm like, how the hell did he come up with this? He's created like multiple dimensions, and it's probably going to sound weird, but like multiple dimensions, and there's these other creatures, and they work together. And now there's like, I'm starting to think there's multiple planets and stuff, and it sounds crazy, but it's like, I just don't know how he came up with this. How do people have that level of ability to think and creativity? It blows my mind.
I think it's kind of a shame today, because you don't really see that level of dedication to the storytelling. A lot of it, especially TV writers who, you know, they tend to try to do too many things at once. And usually it's not telling a good story. It's telling a good story is part of it, but you also have to say a good message. You have to teach something. You have to, it's keep it simple. Good story. Yeah. There's not much to it. You know, give us a character we like. To me, that's just where it all goes wrong with most TV series, with most books. You can't like the characters. And that's a dance between actors and writers, because a writer can really sink a good script, and a bad script can sink a good actor. But the big problem for me are the lack of density in characters.
I could not agree more. And the examples I like to use is so Marvel, right? Marvel Iron Man came out in 2008, and that whole journey for me, I was a perfect age. I was so deep in it. Iron Man came out, I was like 11 years old, which means all the way up until Infinity War was this massive journey. Watching Infinity War was the most incredible experience of my life, because I built all these characters and stuff. My biggest worry about Marvel Phase 3 is their characters are way too powerful, and they're not focusing on the development. Like, look at Captain Marvel. She's just came out of nowhere. She's like more powerful than Thor. She didn't really go, her movie, she had no struggle. She just got these powers. She didn't really have any struggle, so we don't relate to her on a depth level. We haven't seen her lose a single battle. Every scene she's in, she just kicks ass.
Does she have kryptonite?
Yeah, she doesn't. There's no kryptonite either. It's like,
okay.
It's and they try to palm it off as an empowering female. It's like, but why don't you make empowering character like Scarlet Witch, another strong female character, but she's gone through so much, and everyone loves her because you've written her as a good character. And I see this all the time. They do it with gay characters as well. They add like a gay character in there to be gay. It's like, why don't you write a character and he can just happen to be gay? Don't make it his entire character trait.
Exactly. Like it drives me nuts, and It's the way it is, because people they can't get canceled, right? Because this is their career, and so they can't ignore it, right? They have to, and to an extent it's great, but to me it's distracting. Most people just want a good story. They want to be entertained. Everything doesn't have to be a lesson. And it's so true with the Marvel thing. Like, the thing that drives me nuts are when characters are too powerful, or when they have vague superpowers. I'm not a big fan of Green Lantern or Wonder Woman, or Scarlet Witch for that matter, because they're so vague. It's like, wait, what do they do? She can do magic. What does that mean? She can do magic.
Get out of any situation with an ability we didn't know they had.
It's not a very clearly defined character, and this is what happens though. Every good thing kind of disintegrates because companies and franchises, they don't know how to end it. They have to keep extending it, and it's this infinite growth is impossible.
Well, I think the other problem with characters that are too powerful is, in order for you to have the character be of any value in the movie, they have to have a villain as equally powerful. And the only scenario where a villain is equally powerful is usually if it's like they're going to destroy the world. And I think we're all a bit sick of Earth destroying plots, because first of all, we know the villain isn't going to win because they're not going to destroy the world. And that's where actually Infinity War with a snap went a bit against the grain. But the example I love is Man of Steel and The Dark Knight. So The Dark Knight is one of the most successful superhero movies ever. I don't know if you remember the plot of The Dark Knight at the end. The stakes are there's two ships in the water. One is civilians and one is prisoners, and they could blow each other up. That's the stakes. And they've established the Joker well enough that he could do it. They could both die. But the Man of Steel plot is they're drilling into the Earth to terraform the entire Earth. Now we know they're not going to win because it couldn't happen. And that's where I think Marvel could be heading into a world where their characters are so powerful now, it's just going to get overwhelming, and the only way to beat them is to have a huge plot. Or they do what Black Panther did, and they bring in the cop-out where they bring in a villain who has the same abilities as a hero. So
I don't know where I would be very nervous if I was given that assignment. Like, where do you go from here? If you're Marvel, it's a tough one, because it's escalated. Like, as you said, you just need more and more powerful characters, and I don't know, maybe you can just go in a completely different direction, like what they did with Thor. That he became a comedian basically, and I liked it. I actually thought it was really clever.
People love Thor 3 with
Ragnarok, right?
Ragnarok. Like it's my mum's favorite Marvel movie. They love it.
I loved it. It was hilarious, and I thought, okay, that's a clever way to do it. He's not facing this, a villain that's more powerful than Thor or more powerful than Thanos, right? It's, the whole thing is just, it's essentially a similar plot, a similar movie, but it's a very different twist, right? Oh, so I thought that's clever. Just change the glasses, basically. Just change the lens at which you're looking at it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit, on topic, but like off topic of the whole podcast. In Thor, did you know the rock guy, Korg?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you guys find him funny? Because he's played by the director who's New Zealand, and I grew up in New Zealand, and we Australian and New Zealanders find his comedy really funny, but we heard the Americans don't understand it.
I loved it. That's how I learned.
Okay, good.
Yeah, that whole New Zealand accent, the Kiwi accent. Taika Waititi or something, is he?
Yeah, Taika Waititi.
Taika Waititi, yeah.
Yeah, he's cool. But anyways, man, we've been talking for a while. Sorry to take up your time, but this has been a really interesting chat. We've covered so many different aspects. Before we wrap up, one final question, and it can be completely irrelevant to what we've spoken about, but what would your number one piece of advice be to an 18-year-old today?
Okay, number one advice. I probably should have thought that through. I would say experiment. It's not a time to choose. It's a time to experiment. And another way of saying that is it is never showtime. It's always rehearsal. Even when it's showtime, it's still rehearsal. You're still trying things out. You're still in the writing phase. Keep experimenting. Don't fall into this bucket of, oh, this works, let me go here, because as that famous saying goes, romantic ideals are whittled down to whatever works. When you're 18, you're very eager to find something that works. And when you find something that works, you stick to it. You stick to this medical career. You stick to this law career that I'm going to do for the rest of my life, because that's what kind of works to me. People are like water. They're going to go where there's least resistance. So I would say go where there is resistance. Try things. It's not a time to choose. It's a time to try.
Absolutely. It's like now is the best time to risk, because the consequences are so low if you fail, because you're young. You're still living at home. Like, experiment is the key word, I think. Experiment and get out of your comfort zone. It's just, you just have to do it. No one likes getting out of their comfort zone. That's why it's called a comfort zone. But growth doesn't happen inside your comfort zone.
Nothing ever happens inside your comfort zone. Yeah.
And you and I both know getting on TikTok was really uncomfortable. Oh, yeah. It was comfortable at first because no one knew I was there. Yeah. But once people started to see I was there, I was like, oh man, people, would leave comments. And, I was blessed. My first viral video was positively received. Nowadays, if I get a viral video, it's very rare. It's all positive comments. It's usually some sort of controversial opinion that people love to disagree with or whatever. And, we've said it before, like going viral off the bat is probably the worst thing that could happen to you, because you haven't built up the resilience and the habit.
And you have no idea what you're doing. And I think the worst thing to happen to you is if you go viral off a random video that you didn't really know, where you didn't really know what was going on. And suddenly you're like, oh, well, hey, I'm just going to tell psychology facts or life hacks, and that'll be my thing now. No, I don't think that's a way to go. I think you should definitely, cut your teeth and fail at something you love until you succeed at something you love, and it's going to make sense to you. It's going to have more meaning.
Consistency and sacrifice, I think, two key messages of this chat. But
find your suffering. Find a way you want to suffer and stick to it.
Because I love that point you said, when you're looking for a partner, find the stuff that you can be okay with, as opposed to finding the good stuff in them. Find the stuff that the flaws in them that you're okay with. Yeah. Because everyone has flaws. So anyways, Baron, I know you've got a book coming out soon-ish. Did you want to just give us like a 1 minute, what's that about? Where can people find out more about it? I'm sure they'd love to get a copy. Like, what's happening there?
So it's about, I would say it's a TV show in a book form. It's a collection of short stories, but it's on one character. So it's not like we're resetting this whole world. It's a whole new characters every story. No, it's one character, like Sherlock Holmes or other. And it's a bit like, I would say, the show Fleabag and maybe a little bit of Seinfeld mixed in. It's about a guy finding and figuring out the meaning of life in a college setting.
Hmm.
And it's coming out. It's coming out soon. Yeah, it's coming out soon. I sent it in to my my agents, and they're figuring out what to do with it.
Yeah, I'm keen. I'm super keen for it. Guys, grab a copy. I'll put all the links below, but the links will be below, but where's the best place to get into contact with you or follow you online?
Oh, you could look me up on TikTok or Instagram, AmericanBaron, and then you can just click that link. That's just kind of a sign up if you wanted to like pre-order the book. It's not a pre-order thing, but it's just a, hey, I'm interested. And you'll get the book early, basically.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. All right, well, Baron, thanks so much for this chat. I've had a lot of fun. This has been a really cool episode, and looking forward to your book.
Oh, hey, this was a lot of fun. I can't believe so much time went by so quickly.
I know. Far out. Thanks for coming on, man.
Hey, thanks, Baron.